So I'm here with Jose Vega, who's been protesting all the war pigs in Congress in New York. And guess what? Zelensky vows Ukraine will take back Crimea from Russia. Now, that's from January 19th. So this journalist went there. This guy, Keir Simmonds, he recently went to Crimea and reported that most Crimeans are pro-Russian. So you want to see? Here.
Is Crimea Russian or Ukrainian?
Russian,
Crimea
конечно.
is Russian.
Да.
Of course Russian. 73-year-old Praksovia tells me. Zelensky will not get Crimea back because we have our commander-in-chief, Putin.
Глава командующих Putin.
Every one of them told us that they are Russian and that if President Zelensky thinks Ukrainian forces can come here, they will fight them. President Zelensky has said that the Ukraine war started here and it will end here. But no one was able to tell us how it will end and how much more blood will be spilt.
So for launch, so that what that shows is that the propaganda is propaganda, that the people who say that Crimea was taken over violently or against their will by Russia is not true. And so for doing that report, that guy was put on the kill list by the Ukrainian government. Just so you know, that's so now Ukraine has put him on the hit list website for reporting this fact. What does the United States government think about Ukraine adding an NBC journalist? Now an NBC journalist, but the rest of the journalists at NBC aren't going to mention it. They're not going to mention it. And they're not going to tell you the truth about Ukraine. How that guy was able to do that report is mind-boggling. And I bet he'll be reprimanded by NBC for that too. They get killed on a kill list in Ukraine, and NBC's probably going to send him, ship him off to Siberia. Let me bring in Jose. What did you think about that?
Look, I think this is clearly just when you do an attempt at some kind of honest reporting, you go into the area, right, into Crimea, and then you see people are proudly Russian. This wasn't even him trying to be. He was just going in and doing an honest job. And what happens, right? You get smacked down for being honest and telling the truth, which I have a little experience in because I got called by the Capitol Police, but we can talk about that in a second. You know, this is all clearly just what I was talking about a little bit in the previous segment where, you know, they had this seminar saying, you know, decolonize Russia to avoid senseless bloodshed. Casey Michael of the Hudson Institute, he wrote this in the Atlantic magazine, and he said, you know, we have to, once Ukraine staves off Russia's attempts to recolonize it, the West must support full freedom for Russia's imperial subjects, right? So this means like Chechnya, this means the Caucasus, right? That whole region, they want to just basically liberate it, in quotes, from Russia's grasp and just cut it up into 10 independent parts that they can all control, because that's what this is all about. And so when you get reports like this, when people are like, no, actually, I like the Russians. Russians are cool. I'm happy they're here. That completely blows away not just the narrative, but their intention of trying to dismantle Russia.
And so here he went on with Andrea Mitchell. And let's watch his report and how she handles it.
President Zelensky vowed on Sunday to take back Crimea. How realistic is that? The people there whom you spoke to...
Even Andrea Mitchell, one of the biggest war pig journalists, even her, she's like, how's that going to happen? She's like, okay, even I can't say this with a straight face, right? So now they're starting to turn on the Ukrainian war propaganda at NBC News. There's no bigger tool of the military-industrial complex than NBC News. So here, let's watch.
View themselves as Russian.
That's right. From those people that we spoke to, it seemed unrealistic. And Andrew, I want to show you some new picture that we filmed yesterday at the port of Sevastopol. Now, this is the closest that any US news crew has got to the Russian Black Sea fleet in many, many years. What you're seeing here are President Putin's ships at that port. Why it's important is because Vladimir Putin will be determined to defend that port, to not have it taken away from him. He may well do pretty much anything to try to achieve that. And the reason why is because it is so strategically important to Russia. But here's the irony. The fact since he launched that invasion a year ago in Ukraine, the Ukrainians now will be determined not to have the Black Sea Fleet there, potentially threatening their coast for years to come. So it is a very, very dangerous standoff that suggests that this could pan out for some time to come. It's hard to see how you reach a negotiation over that. And there in Sevastopol, Andrew, I've got to tell you, I mean, there was just military everywhere, absolutely everywhere. It is a military town. So again, when, for example, Victoria Nuland talks about, at the very least, we want Crimea to be demilitarized, I found myself standing there and wondering, how on earth does that happen?
And Keir, we keep hearing that Crimea is exactly what NATO and the U.S. fear Zelensky will try to go into with long-range weapons, maybe even with those F-16s if he ever were to get them, which I don't think he will, not in the near term. They're worried that that is a tripwire for Vladimir Putin. What is your take on that?
That's what they are worried about. I mean, that we're standing in the place that has Jake Sullivan, for example, really worried, Andrew. And the reason why is because the idea that NATO weapons might kind of land on this place, potentially kill Russian civilians, and that would be an escalation. But by the way, this is an enormous challenge. And General Mark Milley has made this clear. This is an enormous challenge for the Ukrainians. Here's why. Let's just give you a close-up look at that bridge behind me there. That's how we traveled into Crimea. It is open now. It is one of only two ways to get here. The other is a land bridge over to the northwest of here that is very, very much exposed. So with land forces, how do you take Crimea if you are the Ukrainians? That's why General Mark Milley says he thinks that it will be extremely difficult for the Ukrainians to push the Russians out of here. We have seen substantial defenses around this bridge behind.
The people are Russian. They speak Russian, and they want to be part of Russia, and they overwhelmingly voted to be part of Russia. And Zelensky wants to now take over Crimea. So do you see how crazy this is? He thinks he's going to somehow take over Crimea, which doesn't want to be part of Ukraine.
Yeah, of course. And I think, I just want to say real quick, and Jimmy, whoever was in charge of leading the reconstruction of that bridge, we need them here in New York and in the United States, because we've got a bridge here, the QBE, the Queens Brooklyn Expressway, been 30 years under construction, and they're still fixing it up, whatever they're doing. So I want that guy to come here and be in charge of our infrastructure department instead of Pete Buttigieg, because that guy is
I agree. I just want to give a tip of the hat to this reporter. That guy is the 007 of reporter. He looks fantastic in his zippered up collar wool sweater with his. He really does, doesn't he? He's the British suave journalist, is what he is. So, why do people find this so difficult to believe? Prior to the coup in 2014, Crimea had twice passed a referendum for independence from Ukraine, which was rejected by Russia. And then, please tell me we aren't doing the thing where we act like doing vox pop interviews in public and without concealing identities is a valid way to collect information in an authoritarian regime. So this guy's trying to throw water on the guys in the NBC reporter's interview with that regular person who said they love Russia. And so that's what he's doing. And then Branko Marcetic comes in and says, there's been years of robust, respected public polling on this issue, coupled with on-the-ground reporting that reflects this report, not to mention pre-2014 moves for Crimean separatism. The only thing notable about it is that it's coming from NBC, and it's in the middle of this war. That's what I said. The fact that this guy is able to say this, we all know this is true, but the fact that NBC tells the truth, that's really crazy. In the middle of a war, NBC's telling you a truth that the hegemons and the imperialists don't want you to know. That's what's newsworthy about that. Branko has it correct. All right. Well, listen, Jose, anything you'd like to say about this or the war or your organizing?
Yeah, I just want to throw this out there one more time. Listen, on the Rage Against the War Machine website, we are starting an intervention course series, a class series on how to intervene. There's a guide there, how to find an intervention, how to know the subject, how to do it if you're with a group of 3 people, if you're by yourself, if you're with your friend. It's all very detailed, and then you can register because on Wednesday we will have the first Zoom class where you can register and you can do the Q&A with me and my colleagues on a more in-depth discussion on what to do when you're actually intervening. And on top of that, I just want to thank you, Jimmy, for having me on and giving me the opportunity to talk to you. I'm very optimistic and I'm hopeful for the future. Really, I am. I know it's a strange statement to make, but as Dr. King said, only when it is darkest can you see the stars. And I'm very happy to be a part of a time in history where people like yourself and others are those stars. That's a pun for you. Are the stars that can actually shine some light and give people some hope. And so that's all I got to say.
Jose, thank you very much for coming on, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon. And thanks for all the work you're doing, Jose Vega. Thank you very much. If you want to see my stand-up special, become a member at jimmydore.com. It's only $10, and come see our live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, St. Paul, Honolulu, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, and more.